Is Street Fighter 6 the greatest fighting game of all time? The only fighting game that I really loved was Dragon Ball, but I never could get the same passion in other games, and found myself drifting away from the genre. I never touched a Street Fighter before, but I noticed that SF6 is the game that so many people vouch for. So, this video, I tried to become a decent player by grinding to Master Rank to see exactly why everybody loves SF6. And also, answer the question, how hard is it to learn SF6 nowadays in 2026? The first problem, who should I play? I just picked who I thought looked the coolest, so I chose to main Ed. First, because I thought his moves looked sick, and he shared a name with me, so I got bonus points, and coincidentally, people think he's pretty good. Starting out, this is where my fighting game experience came in handy. I did the tutorial and ignored everything else. In-game guides are built from a dev's day one testing. From my experience, once a community creates their own tech and combos, character guides become outdated for how a character is best played. So how did I learn? Well, I just searched who's the best Ed main in the world, and most people thought it was a player named Lashar. So I went to YouTube, watched his games, and stole his tech. Learning from pros is helpful because pro level play usually showed the proper way to play the game. For example, I noticed in pro matches that players barely jumped. I learned it's possible to drive rush to neutral and saw how common stagger pressure with up to 3 jabs was. And with Ed specifically, I learned what his commonly used buttons were, found out that Ed's wake up options usually end with a move called kill rush, and most importantly, I collected Ed combos. The first thing I did was learn combos, because having no combos is like trying to kill your opponent with paper cuts. In the fighting games I played, due to a system called Gatling, you can learn a single BNB combo and go a long way. But I found in SF6, it sacrificed combo length for variety. When learning Ed, I collected everything I saw in a spreadsheet. I wrote down tech and combos with timestamps to videos. But the main problem I had when copying Lashar was that I didn't understand why he was choosing to do a combo over another, or if what he was doing was optimal. I really was just putting all my faith in him. Thankfully, it was easy to spot Ed's BNB, his go-to combo for most situations, because it's just the combo that I saw the most. So after collecting Ed's core combos, the first thing I did was hop into training mode. When learning combos, the goal was to do them 5 times in a row. The main thing was to develop muscle memory so I could whip out the combos like second nature. I'll be real, when you learn a combo for the first time, it sucks. I found that it took me a lot longer to learn combos in SF6 than in DBFZ, because a lot of combos needed timing. After doing a combo 5 times in a row, I would give myself a pat on the back. One problem. Oh, just because I could do the combo on the left side didn't mean I could do on the right, so back to the lab. I always made it a habit to space my combo practice. If I could do it in one day, I tried to see if I could do it, say, after 3 days, just to make sure I remember how to do it. I found that after going to bed, some combos got easier to do compared to me just grinding them out. Now, there's one big thing I heard about learning Ed, the dream combo. So here's how it went. And so, I concluded, I'm not built like that. So, after learning combos, the first problem I had to solve was, how exactly do I open someone up? In a game like DBFZ, you crack someone open with hard to react, high-low mix-ups and cross-ups. But in SF6, those type of mix-ups are a lot easier to react to. So with Ed, I found the only way to open up the opponent was with throws. Jab throw, shimmies, walk-up throw, and to apply more offense, drive rush and out of moves. And that was all my mix. Basic but reliable. I heard that throw loops are OP, so I was pretty excited to abuse it myself. Only one thing, Ed's throw pushes him so far away from his opponent. From what I saw, to throw loop with Ed, you had to spend drive rush, so it really punished me when I was playing with my brain off. So after learning some basics, I hopped onto my placement matches and discovered a harsh truth. All my studying didn't mean jack against the real thing. I would drop combos left and right, had toothless pressure, and bad habits that I took note to avoid, I'd still do anyways. No matter how much theory you learn, tech you steal, labbing you do, it's different when doing it in a match. So this reminded me how important getting real practice and getting mileage is. I eventually placed in gold, which I'm a bit surprised because looking back, I played really sloppy. So after every game, I tried to give myself feedback, like jump less, and focus on being bees without dropping. But here's the thing about feedback. When I was new, it's pretty easy to see I suck. I found I improved fastest when I went into a match with a single thing I wanted to improve in. Gold was like the Wild West, and I learned a lot of weaknesses I had. For one, I was clueless against jump-ins. In the fighting games I played, a pretty reliable method was using down heavies. In those games, down heavies are invincible to air attacks, but this wasn't the case in SF6, and this is where watching Lashar helped a lot. I found that a good anti-air with Ed was his DP. Now, the problem with DP inputs is that they're balanced by the fact that they're tricky to do. So a lot of times, I'd be too slow to react to a jump in, or often misinput the DP. All in all, my climbing gold was about getting used to Ed's moveset, not dropping basic combos, and after a while, I managed to hit Platinum. Platinum exposed a huge flaw I had. My defense sucked. People in Platinum had tighter pressure, and I'd see my weaknesses exploited. For defense, I just relied on basic principles, like how one thing every fighting game has in common is that holding down back to block is king. And I also already knew the concept of moves being plus and negative. But the main problem was how to know if a move is plus or negative. I'd usually assume that moves that took a long time to get going were positive, that OD moves were positive, and not to mash until the third jab. There were times when there were exceptions to the rules. Sometimes you just gotta get punched to know. So I'd often get abused by a move, and honestly, the only way to deal with it was to study the move in training or search up the counterplay. I'd also get hit by a ton of drive impacts, so it was a big focus of mine to counter it. I also realized when watching pro matches that I wasn't backrolling in wake up. The reason you backroll a lot in mid-screen is to weaken a lot of follow-up options. Intuition would tell you to backroll, you'd have to hold left when you wake up. But when I was holding back, nothing happened. For some reason, it turns out that to backroll, you have to hold 2 attack buttons. So everything was going well. But something big came up that put my progress to a stop. A new tag fighting game released, and I was having a lot of fun. So I stopped playing SF6. So I returned to learning SF6, but here's the thing, I forgot everything. Now thankfully, because of my spreadsheet, I could relearn a lot of things quickly, but there were some things I wrote in the past that I have no clue what I was trying to say. When I was relearning combos, I was pleasantly surprised that things came back to me pretty quickly. In fact, I think my time grinding out Tuxedo helped me improve in SF6 by polishing my fundamentals. After a good while, it felt like things were starting to click, and I was getting a grasp of how all the systems came together. I finally reached a point where I managed to get a solid winning streak. So I got to Diamond 2. And I started to choke. I could feel the skill increase in Diamond. While in Platinum, I could see the occasional bad habits. I saw a lot less of it here. Also in Diamond, there were a lot of times where I'd go, that's cheap. So here, most players have their tech flapped out. This was also the rank where I noticed my offense was not up to snuff. In some matches, my opponents could consistently tech my throws or block my jabs. After some research, I realized a lot of my opponents were doing a defensive technique called the delay tech. For an ultra basic explanation, jabs come out faster than throws. So when you're delay teching, essentially you're holding back at the start in case your opponent does a jab, then switch to pressing throw a bit later, so you'll also tech a throw. That's why it's called delay tech, because you're delaying the throw. Delay teching is great because it'll make you get opened up less. Of course, there's counterplay, like delaying a button or walking back and forward to fake a throw, so you'll have to mix it up. Most of my feedback came from comparing what Lashar is doing compared to me, or some intuitive feedback like, oh, I do this a lot and get hit a lot, or this setup is hella fake, why do I do this? For example, one problem I encountered when watching pro gameplay was that because I blindly imitated tech, I ran the risk of doing it completely wrong. For example, when I was doing safe jumps, I thought Ed players were using jump light punch instead of jump heavy punch. I didn't didn't realize that when you do a safe jump, you have to hold down back after the jump. So a lot of times, my opponents would side switch me. And I also didn't realize Ed needed to have 42 plus frames of advantage to safe jump. And then came the Alex patch. The one good, or depending how you view it, bad thing about SF6 is that the game's balance doesn't change. So during my rank up, Ed got nerfed, but I wasn't really affected because I didn't use the nerf moves much. And the other half the nerfs didn't affect me because I'm not very good. And alongside the balance changes came a new character. So during my grind, everybody was trying out Alex. The upside, I was going against players who didn't have a lot of time to lab. The downside, well, I was going against players with way better fundamentals than me. So while praying, I wouldn't run into a JP, and after fighting an army of Alex, I managed to claw my way up. Everything I learned was for this moment.
Round 2. Fight!
So after reaching Masters, it finally clicked to me why people love Street Fighter. It's pretty darn awesome. With tag games, the fun comes from how busted it can be. On the other hand, SF6 feels slower and more honest. One thing that I appreciated about SF6 is that matchmaking is addicting. Thank God that the devs realized just make online play easy to get to, and there, easy as that. No need to overcomplicate things. And the game's training mode, I love it. It's a complete package for someone solely focused on improving. SF6 is the rare fighting game where I can't really nitpick it. Casually, it's also one of the few fighting games where its content warrants its price, so you won't be pissed about dropping $60 on the game. My time learning SF6 felt smooth. Despite the game being out for a while, I didn't feel like I was going against opponents above my weight class, which I think is owed to the fact that the game has a really healthy player base. Though, I'd say learning a fighting game late is less fun than learning a fighting game on release, because you lose the magic of finding new tech for your character and team once a game's solved. Doing this video also taught me how universal fundamentals are. The only fighting games I played were tag games, and even though they're a lot different, fundamentals still mattered. They gave me an idea of the things to focus on and ignore. I was also less overwhelmed as I didn't have to relearn basic concepts like frame data or how to block, which I would imagine would be a nightmare for absolute beginners to stomach all at once. It took me about 60 hours to get to Masters, and I think most people would get there a lot faster than I did. I felt like I spent too much time in the lab focused on combos. With combos, it's probably best to hit the lab for a bit, then focus on doing it in a real match, because you're getting way more effective practice that way. So, what I learned? Yeah, Street Fighter 6 is a banger.
Just one thing I want to say. Fighting game is something so great.